Been around for starting our 7th year now. We are completely self-funded, meaning we've been profitable since inception. And it's because we do a type of work that's very high value, and we're the only people who do it. We refer to it as evidence analysis or evidence analytics. I have no idea how you would say that in French. I've never considered it until this very moment. But it's the idea that every single one of us each day leaves behind a complex electronic footprint. You card into a building in the morning, you use your cell phone, maybe you pick up faxes, instant messages, emails, voicemails, calendar events, all manner of thing all day long. You look at things on a wiki, perhaps, who knows. And your behavior every day is not all that much different from any other day, or maybe every Monday is the same as every other Monday, or perhaps in the case of a Société Générale, it's when the market is high, you behave a certain way, when it's low, you behave a certain way. And it's not just you, it's all of your colleagues with similar responsibilities to you. And there are very clear patterns of how they interact with each other and how they interact with all of the systems that they use, not just the financial or transactional systems, but email and everything else. We're the only company in the world that offers software to analyze all of these different patterns and to try to understand whether your behavior is normal, based on our empirically built models of what normal is. So take a very, very simple example of what's gone on here at Société Générale. In one of the interviews of Jérôme Creviel, he said, well, I could never really go on vacation because if I went on vacation, I might get caught, right? And further, when he went on vacation, his managers would call him and ask him what to do because, they wanted him to keep making all of that money. And he said, even that's very abnormal. Well, especially in France, right, where you all have, 6 weeks of vacation a year. Yeah. So as a practical matter, even that would have been abnormal, right? Him getting emails from fake customers that he never presumably sent email to, that's abnormal. Presumably there were differences in workflow between the real customers that he had and the fake customers that he had, which again our software would have picked up. Further, in other criminal investigations that we've been involved in, our software's had to analyze which messages created on your machine actually came from you, meaning were authored by you, versus being authored by somebody else. We hold the patent on it. It was granted, very sweeping patent information retrieval, granted of December of 2006, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it basically says that what you now need to do effective search within corporations, as opposed to what Google does, is the ability to put together, to stitch together, if you will, all of these different small bits of data that would create during the day. Stitch together the phone call to the email to the instant message to the transaction or the whatever it may have been. And that's a really critical step forward both in search and in investigation, because now I can put all of these things in a context to determine whether they're normal for you or not. And it was an idea that I had originally. When I was selling my last company, I was looking to answer a bunch of questions that some Price Waterhouse or somebody had asked. And some of the questions were very difficult in terms of how many, you needed to look at many different types of applications and different items to understand what the answer was. So for example, one of the questions was, how many meetings did you have with big 6 firms on average before they agreed to partnership arrangements? Well, there's no document that's going to tell you that. And so I ended up looking through lots of different sources, trying to compile the information. And I used to manage much of engineering at Verity back when Philippe Courteau was the CEO who hired me. And so I'm a much more power user of search than most other people are. And so for that reason, I realized that there was an opportunity, because if I was having trouble with it, what would the normal person do? And what if the answers really mattered? What if it was a nuclear power plant or some terrorist thing or something like that, where it actually mattered that you got the right answer? And that's where the idea came from. It is a search of a type. It absolutely is. I'm very fond of saying our search engine is the only one in the world that will find something that's not there. It's much easier to find holes than you would think. In other words, you can delete the data and say, see, I deleted it, now it's okay. But let's say, for example, if this happened in a case we were involved in a few years ago, all of the minutes for a few board meetings disappeared. Right? Why? Because everybody involved in the meeting disappeared them because they didn't want them around anymore. Right? But that's very, very unusual. Right? On the other hand, at least in the United States, when there's litigation, typically lawyers look at document by document. Right? And the problem with that is they only see what's there. They don't see what's not there. Likewise, if you do a search with any other search engine, it'll say, aha, here's all the board minutes. And you have to realize that, some of these are missing. And G, is there a conspiratorial pattern in how they're missing? So yes, it's a type of search, but we also do a lot of behavioral modeling that helps enable our search. As this relates to something like Societe Generale, where we're saying here, you're looking at this completely the wrong way because you have a system that's rule-based that is focused on your financial system. But gee, this guy did many other things during the day, all of which, or at least some number of which, would have been flagged as abnormal and which would have been very difficult to have concealed. And that's what needs to be put on their radar, because otherwise they fix the rule-based system and add some new rules. The same thing's only going to happen again, maybe not tomorrow, but, a few years down the road. One of the questions you see a lot in the press about Societe Generale is, okay, one presumes that the guy's boss knew and the guy's boss's boss knew, but, how far up the chain should the inference be made that they both knew about the specific instance and did nothing and realized the extent of the whole? And, that's the more interesting question there. But what we've been positing internally is the risk management section, or whatever it is they would be called there. That's really our client, because they have the oversight responsibility. And ultimately, if something goes wrong at the end of the day, even if they don't deliberately fire any guy or two or three there, it's egg on their face. A little less than 100. Our headquarters are in Redwood City, right behind Oracle. We have an office in downtown Washington, D.C., and we have a small presence in Europe as well, in both France and Germany. There are a ton of companies who sell document review software. There may even be 100 of them. Truthfully, I couldn't tell you how many there are, because there are a lot of them. There are many companies that sell search engines for corporate data, as I'm sure you know. And we do those things also, frankly, because we have to. People want one solution. They don't want to have to buy 6 different solutions from 6 different vendors. But in terms of really specializing on evidence analysis, and answering sophisticated questions about trends in the data, and not just email, but again, things that have no textual content at all, such as phone records. We are, in fact, the only people who do it. And sometimes that's what drives the business, and sometimes it's not. It depends how much risk is involved in the case. When you get into a case that's just really hard to prove, and where the lawyers are thinking, gee, maybe this isn't going so well, increasingly we're getting the phone call.